Kim, can I tell you something that happened at the dealership years ago before any of this AI conversation even existed?
Okay, please.
We had 11 salespeople, all different personalities, different energy, different styles. Some of them were extraordinary, the kind of person who could make you feel like buying a car and make you think it was your own idea from the very beginning.
And then the others, right?
Fine, technically fine, showed up, did the job, hit the numbers from month to month, some missed a couple. And here's the thing, when the customer had a fine experience, they didn't blame the salesperson. They didn't even remember the salesperson's name. They just didn't come back.
So what you're telling me is that hiring better wasn't the answer.
I tried. Expensive lesson. What actually worked was something different. I stopped trying to fix the people. I built a system. Here's how we greet someone the moment they walk in. Here's how we follow up after a test drive. Here's what we never say. Here's what success looks like every single step.
So what you're trying to say then, Hal, is that you encoded your standards.
Wrote them down, trained to them, held people accountable.
And then?
Good ones got better, and the fine ones stopped being just fine.
That story is about a car dealership. But right now, in this moment in AI, it's about every small business trying to figure out why their AI outputs feel inconsistent. Because here's what nobody tells you when you hand your team AI tools and say, go ahead, use them. Intelligence, whether artificial or human, will always find its own version of fine, unless you build a system that tells it what great looks like. And that's the missing layer between prompts and profit. I'm Kim,
I'm Hal.
and this is Small Business Big AI, the podcast for operators who are done experimenting and ready to build a technology-enabled superpower.
Week 2 of the Impact series. Last week we talked about identify in mode, the thinking that happens before you ever type a prompt. If you tried that exercise even once, you probably noticed the output felt different, less generic, more like something you actually send.
And so now this week, we talk about what happens when it's not just you. I mean, when your whole team is using AI. So when 6 people are briefing intelligence 6 different ways and nobody built the system that tells it how to think.
That's when things get interesting.
That's when things get expensive.
Set the problem up for me, because I think a lot of operators feel like they're doing the right things. They encourage their teams to use AI. Things are moving faster, outputs are coming quicker. That feels like a win.
Well, it is a win in the short run, Hal. So let's picture a team of, say, 7 people. Everyone's using AI. Their first drafts, they come out faster. And research takes less time. That's all great. Emails get answered quicker. And productivity is measurably up
Sounds like success.
until you zoom out. Because across a week of output, emails, proposals, social posts, client, reports, something, starts to feel off. Not wrong exactly.
Just uneven.
Right, uneven. Like the company doesn't quite sound like itself anymore.
I know that feeling from the dealership. You view 5 customer follow-up calls. They sound like they came from 5 different companies. Same training, same product, 5 completely different experiences.
And you know how the customer, they don't separate those experiences. They don't say the salesperson was off today. They say the dealership.
Always the dealership.
And the same thing happens with AI. So no one person's output looks wrong, but across the team, across the week, the business stops sounding like itself. And I call that something specific:
What?
intelligence drift.
Intelligence drift?
The business deployed AI, but never defined how AI should think. So every session pulls the output slightly away from the brand, the voice, the standard. I mean, no single email looks wrong, no single proposal is off. But over time, the cumulative drift becomes something that the founder feels before they can name it.
That's slow damage. The worst kind, because you don't see it coming.
Right. You see it after, and usually at the worst possible moment.
So why does this keep happening? Because I think most operators assume that if they set things up reasonably well at the start, the AI kind of holds, maintains the standard on its own.
And that's the assumption right there. I mean, is where the drift begins, because it comes from how we've been trained to think about tools. How a calculator doesn't need a briefing. So you punch in the numbers and it gives you the math. Same answer every time, regardless of who is using it.
2 plus 2 is 4, whether it's me or my finance manager.
Exactly. But AI is not math, Hal. AI is judgment, it's perspective, context, and every session is a fresh interpretation of an incomplete brief. So when every person on your team is briefing it differently,
You get 7 different interpretations of the same standard.
right, you get random intelligence. It's technically capable, contextually random.
Which is almost worse than no AI at all, because it looks like it's working.
Right. That outputs are coming. The volume is there. The speed is real. But the coherence, the thing that makes a brand feel like a brand, that is dissolving quietly in the background. And the reason isn't the AI. The reason is that nobody ever told the AI how to think inside this specific business.
Which is, and I say it as a person who learned it the expensive way with 11 salespeople, a leadership problem, not a technology problem.
Exactly. That is exactly right. And that's where Sophia comes in. Now, Sophia runs a premium skincare brand out of Nashville. 7 people on her team, a product line she spent 4 years building, not in a lab, but in her own kitchen, on her own skin, and in her own journals.
Her own journals?
4 years of notebooks, Hal. Every formula she tested, she wrote down what it felt like. Not just what it did scientifically, but what it felt like to use, the texture, the scent, the moment when she put it on at 6 in the morning and thought, yes, that's it. That's the one.
That's a very specific kind of knowing. And it's entirely in her head?
Entirely in her head and in those notebooks that are on her desk, nowhere else. So when Sophia's brand voice came together, she describes it as getting advice from a brilliant friend who happens to have a PhD in dermatology.
That's a great line. That's the line that reminds me of you could only buy a car at Goldsboro Chrysler Dodge Jeep, which used to be my old store. That's
That's
a
it.
pal deal.
Right. You get your PhD. But let's get back to Sophia here, okay?
Oh, okay. All right.
So if we look at Sophia, she had 4 years of understanding who her customer is, okay? What she's worried about, though, how she wants to feel when she puts something on her face. Now, Sophia knew all of it. She lived all of it just like you did. And it came through in every piece of copy that she touched personally. Then she encouraged her team to start using AI.
Oh, no.
Right, here we go. Product descriptions, email sequences, social captions. Productivity went up. Things were moving. And then one afternoon, she's reviewing copy for a new launch. 7 products, 7 descriptions.
Let me guess. 7 different brands.
Right. One sounds clinical, one sounds like an influencer trying too hard, and one sounds like someone opened a thesaurus to the word luxurious and just went for it.
Oof.
And her team, well, they did nothing wrong. I mean, nothing at all. They used AI exactly the way she asked, but they just each briefed it from their own interpretation of what Sophia's brand meant, which, how, quite honestly, it turned out to be 7 different things. Because the real definition, remember, it was in a notebook on her desk, not in a system that anyone else could access.
You can't ask people to honor a standard they can't see.
That's right. And she spent 3 hours rewriting those 7 descriptions. And somewhere in that 3rd hour, something shifted. She wasn't frustrated with her team anymore. She was curious about something else, something a little harder.
What?
How do you take something that lives in a notebook, something felt, not just known, and turn it into a system that carries it beyond you, into every session with every team member, every time AI touches the brand?
So how did she answer that question?
She stopped trying to teach people her taste and she built a system that has taste.
Say that again?
Well, she built a system that has taste. Because here's what most businesses do when AI output gets inconsistent: they write better prompts or they dust off the brand guide.
Which usually lives in a Google Drive folder that nobody opened since the rebrand 3 years ago.
That's right. Exactly. So here's the problem, Hal, with both of those approaches. So a prompt solves one output, but a brand guide describes the destination. But neither one tells intelligence how to decide when two things are in tension, when warm conflicts with precise, and when accessible conflicts with premium, when the customer is sophisticated but also just wants to feel taken care of
Which is every real piece of copy all the time.
all the time. And that's what a thinking system does differently. It doesn't just describe, it decides, and it has 2 layers.
Walk me through them.
Well, layer 1, like we talked about last week, is mode, the operating posture. How should intelligence approach this specific kind of work? Now, for Sophia's product descriptions, mode sounds like this. You are not writing about skincare. You are a trusted friend who understands skin science deeply, but never leads with it. You lead with the customer, what she's feeling, what she's worried about, what she wants to believe is possible. The science is the reassurance, not the headline.
That's not a description of a voice. That's a set of priorities.
Right. It is a set of priorities, Hal. And that's exactly what mode does. It tells AI what to care about most when it has to make a choice. So when in doubt, lead with the customer, not the ingredient.
In layer two,
Well, layer two, we're introducing this week, is parameters. And this is where it gets specific in the best possible way. So Sophia wrote 5 rules, not guidelines, but rules. Never start with the product, start with the customer. Use human language first, science second. Never exceed 90 words per description. Never use the word luxury. And the fifth one, now this is my favorite.
what is it?
If you would say it in a doctor's office, rewrite it.
That is so specific. I love it.
And that's the whole point, Hal, because premium and warm means 17 different things to 17 different people. But if you say it in a doctor's office, rewrite it. That is a rule that every single team member can apply independently and arrive at the same result. There's no interpretation needed. No, wait, what does Sophia mean by that? It is clear, it's testable, it travels.
You've made the judgment portable.
So that's what parameters do. They take the taste that lived in Sophia's notebooks, 4 years of felt experience, of knowing in her bones what her brand is and isn't, and they turn it into an infrastructure, something AI can operate from consistently, something her team can work within confidently, something that means the 7th product description sounds like the first one every time because the thinking system is the same for all 7.
She stopped trying to teach people her taste and built a system that has her taste.
Yes, she said that to me directly, Hal, and I haven't stopped thinking about it since.
So let's make sure I'm understanding the bigger picture, because I think there are operators listening right now who are leaning in and operators who are thinking, that sounds like more work before I even start.
And I want to speak to both of those people, Hal, because the ones leaning in are right. This changes everything. And the ones who think it's more work, they're also right. It is more work up front. But here's what that work is actually buying you.
What is it buying?
It is taking the intelligence that currently lives in the founder's head and making it portable. It's making it durable, scalable. So Sophia's 4 years of notebooks, her felt knowledge, her hard-won understanding what her brand is and what it is not, that used to leave the building every time she left the building, but now it doesn't.
It stays in the system.
It stays in the system. And here's what changes when that happens. New team members onboard faster because the standard is documented, not assumed. AI outputs land closer on the first draft because intelligence has somewhere to stand.
And the founder gets to stop being the only person who knows what good looks like.
That right there is the most expensive bottleneck in any small business. The founder whose taste is the standard, but whose taste lives only in their head. Every approval, every round of revisions, that's not quite right. Let me just fix it myself. All of it flows through one person because nobody built the system that carries the standard forward.
We've both been that person.
Exactly. We've both been that person, Hal, more times than I'd even like to count.
Yep.
That's right. So mode and parameters are how you stop being that person. Not by lowering your standards. That's not what I'm talking about. But by building a system that holds them consistently at scale without you in the room for every single output.
So why don't more businesses do this? Because when you lay it out this way, it sounds so obvious.
Because it requires stopping. And operators, especially the ones who built something real from nothing like we did, they they are not naturally good at stopping. We're good at moving, at building, starting. Stopping to document how intelligence should think, well, that feels like overhead. Like something you do when the business is bigger, when things maybe slow down a little.
When we have more time,
Right, which is always the next quarter or and next year. But in the meantime, the team is using AI every single day. Each session starting from scratch, each person briefing it from their own interpretation of a standard that was never written down
and the drift accumulates.
quietly until the day that you sit down to review 7 product descriptions for a new launch and realize the brand that you spent 4 hard years building, the brand that lives in your notebooks, in your skin, in 4 years of Tuesday nights testing formulas in your kitchen, sounds like it was written by a committee that never even met.
That's a hard day.
Right. And Sophia told me that she sat down with those descriptions for a long time before she started rewriting because she wasn't just frustrated, she was a little heartbroken.
Because she built something that was real and it was getting blurry.
And the fix wasn't a better team, it wasn't even a better tool, it was architecture. The one thing that she hadn't built yet, because once she built it, once mode and parameters existed, then something interesting happened. Something I don't want you to miss.
What happened?
Well, the outputs improved for everyone, not just for Sophia's sanity, but for the team members who have been doing their best with an invisible standard, for the AI that had been guessing at what premium meant, and for the customers who started noticing, maybe without even being able to say why, that every touch point felt like the same brand, the same brilliant friend with the PhD, whether it was a product description, an email, or a caption on a photo. The intelligence didn't get smarter, the system did,
Tools respond.
and systems run. So before we close, one thing I want you to do this week, and it's less than you think.
One page.
1 page. Pick one area of your business where the AI outputs feel inconsistent. Maybe it's client communications, or maybe it's social content. Maybe it's even proposals or follow up emails. Just one. Now, I want you to write the mode, not what should AI produce, but how should it think? What should it prioritize when 2 things are pulling against each other? What perspective should it bring to this specific kind of work? Then write 5 parameters, not guidelines, rules, specific enough that someone else, someone who has never talked to you about your brand, could apply them and arrive at the same result that you would.
And if you're not sure where to start,
Think about the last time you looked at something someone produced and said, not quite right. Let me fix it. What made it not quite right? Now, that's your first parameter. You already know the standard. You just haven't written it down yet.
mode plus parameters, one function, one page.
And that's your first intelligence layer. And once it exists, once the standard is out of your head and into the system, then I want you to watch what changes.
Let's bring it together because I want people who've been listening since episode 83 to feel the arc of where we are.
Episode 83. Now, we talked about two kinds of mornings, the chaotic one and the one that's already organized. And we named the gap. Most businesses bought AI tools, but very few built AI systems.
Episode 84, we went inside the individual experience, identified the decision, defined the mode, lead before you delegate, think with the end in mind. That changed what one person could do with AI.
This week is what happens when it's not just one person, when consistency matters, when the brand that you spent years building needs to survive contact with intelligence that doesn't automatically know what you know.
Mode at scale, parameters as infrastructure.
And the thing I want every operator to carry forward from this episode, the thing that Sophia figured out that changed her relationship with AI completely
She stopped trying to teach people her taste.
and built a system that has taste. Because taste, real taste, the kind built from 4 years of notebooks and Tuesday nights and formulas tested on your own skin, that's not teachable in a meeting, but it is documentable. It is encodable. And once it's in the system, it travels beyond the founder, beyond the team member who absorbed your standards by proximity, beyond any single person's capacity to hold. And that's not just better AI output, Hal.
That's the business carrying something forward that used to leave the building every time the founder did.
That's institutional intelligence. The business getting smarter, not because the tools got better, but because the architecture did.
Next week, episode 86, we move to the next chapter of the impact loop.
Activate. And that's where everything that we've been building starts to actually run. Workflows, automation, sequences, AI operating in the background while you're in a meeting or with a client, or let's be honest, this day and time while you're sleeping.
Which is the good news part.
It is the good news part. But here's what I want you to understand before we get there.
What's that?
Activation only works when the thinking system exists first, when mode is defined, when parameters are set, when intelligence has somewhere to stand. Because if you activate without architecture,
You're not automating a system
you're automating randomness.
at scale.
And that's next week. So until then, write the page. Find the standard that's living in your head and put it somewhere your intelligence can find it. And keep building your technology-enabled superpower.
This has been Small Business Big AI.
We'll see you in the next episode.